Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a tough subject, but one that can't be brushed aside. The stories of bodybuilding legends whose careers and lives were cut way too short. These were guys who lit up the stage, inspired crowds all over the world, but also paid a massive price for their choices and the demanding lifestyle this sport requires. In this video, you'll get a closer look at their journeys, their wins, their glory days, and sadly, the tragic events that mark their lives forever. So, you know the drill. Grab your pre-workout and roll with us. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Rich Piana was one of the most unforgettable and controversial figures in modern bodybuilding. Unlike many athletes who kept their private lives behind closed doors, Rich took the opposite route: radical transparency. On social media, he gained millions of followers because he openly talked about using steroids, something very few had the guts to admit publicly. That brutal honesty made him an icon, admired by some, criticized by others, but impossible to ignore. Beyond honesty, Rich had a magnetic presence. His videos were full of energy, mixing training advice, life reflections, and plenty of motivational words that pushed fans to give their all. He lived by the philosophy of maximum sacrifice, believing that real achievements only came when you were willing to go past your limits. That mindset made him a reference not just in bodybuilding, but in the entire fitness world. Of course, it wasn't only his philosophy that stood out. Rich's look was unmistakable: tattoos covering his huge frame, arms measuring over 23 inches, about 58 centimeters, and a physique that made him recognizable anywhere. He knew how to use that image to leave an impact while delivering his message. Whether he was speaking at expos, walking through nutrition fairs, or posting on social media, his presence commanded attention and his voice was instantly recognizable. He embodied a raw, unfiltered version of bodybuilding. But that same intensity came at a heavy cost. In August 2017, Rich suddenly collapsed at home. Fans were shocked. Just days before, he had been posting daily, sharing workouts and routines as if he were unstoppable. He was rushed to the hospital and placed in a medically induced coma for 2 weeks. News of the incident spread like wildfire, and messages of worry and support poured in from around the globe. Sadly, Rich didn't make it. At just 46 years old, he passed away, leaving a huge void in the fitness community. His death hit millions of followers hard, people who had seen him as a source of motivation. For all the controversy, Rich had become someone who pushed people to think about discipline, sacrifice, and also the risks that come with extreme choices. His passing reignited the conversation about drug use in bodybuilding. Many asked if his intense lifestyle and the substances he admitted to using had played a role in his death. Others saw his journey as a wake-up call. How far is it worth pushing your body for physical results and recognition? Rich's story became both an inspiration and a warning. And that's exactly why Rich Piana remains unforgettable. He proved that raw transparency could draw in millions, but also exposed the dangers behind what most people prefer to hide. His life and his death left a lasting lesson. Just how far are you willing to go for your dreams? Andreas Munzer is still remembered today as one of the most extreme bodybuilders ever to step on stage. Born in Austria, he built his reputation on something very few could match: an insanely shredded and detailed physique, with muscle definition down to the tiniest fiber. His dedication to conditioning was so relentless that he became a reference point for athletes chasing aesthetic perfection. But behind that flawless look, a heavy price was being paid in silence. His pro career kicked off in 1989, when he finally earned the recognition he had been grinding for. From then on, he competed in major shows like Mr. Olympia and the Arnold Classic, always leaving the crowd and judges stunned by the unmatched quality of his physique. Andreas was admired for maintaining a level of definition that seemed almost impossible to achieve, becoming a symbol of what it meant to push physical preparation beyond human limits. That extreme commitment, however, was tied directly to heavy use of anabolic steroids and diuretics. Munzer became known not just for his jaw-dropping physique, but also for his willingness to push his body into levels of sacrifice that almost no one else dared to face. Over time, that dangerous mix of discipline and drug abuse started taking its toll, even if, on the outside, he looked untouchable. In March 1996, Andreas began experiencing severe abdominal pain and was rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis was grim: internal stomach bleeding. Despite doctors' efforts to stabilize him, his kidneys and liver quickly failed. Multiple organ failure followed, and just days later, bodybuilding lost one of its most dedicated and controversial figures. He was only 31 years old. News of his death spread fast, hitting the community like a shockwave. Fans and fellow athletes couldn't believe that someone with such discipline and laser focus could be gone so young. At the same time, his passing exposed a harsh reality. The human body has limits, and pushing past them over and over can lead to irreversible consequences. Andreas Munzer's case reignited heated debates about the use of steroids and diuretics in the sport. For many, his story became the ultimate example of how dangerous it can be to sacrifice health in the pursuit of physical perfection. He turned into a tragic symbol of what happens when aesthetics are placed above life itself. Even today, Andreas is remembered with a bittersweet mix of admiration and sadness. On one hand, he was a model athlete who proved what maximum dedication can achieve. On the other, his story stands as a stark warning about the deadly risks of taking things too far. Kovac was one of the most jaw-dropping bodybuilders in history when it came to sheer size. Born in Canada, he became known worldwide for his monumental build that set him apart from every other athlete. Standing 6 feet 3 inches, about 1.90 m, and weighing close to 400 pounds, around 180 kilograms, at his peak, Greg was a true giant. Just walking into a room, his presence demanded attention, earning both admiration and sparking debates about how far the human body could really be pushed. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, Kovac earned a reputation as the most massive pro on the circuit. His arms measured an unbelievable 27 inches, around 68 centimeters, in circumference, a number that seemed to defy biology itself. That freakish size placed him in a category of his own, but it also raised questions. How much of that mass was really a competitive advantage, and how much was simply a spectacle? Despite his monstrous build, Greg never cracked the top rankings in major shows. His best placing was 13th at the 2004 Arnold Classic, a modest finish compared to the hype around his physique. Still, the name Kovac stuck in people's minds because he embodied the pursuit of extreme size. Even if it didn't always win trophies, it left a lasting impression on anyone who saw him. Offstage, Kovac dedicated himself to sharing his knowledge of training and nutrition. He worked as a coach and consultant, passing on his experience to upcoming athletes. But his journey was always shadowed by the debate over the cost of extreme hypertrophy. Many pointed out that Greg's colossal frame, while impressive, was also the product of risky choices that could take a toll on his health. Sadly, those concerns proved true. In November 2013, Greg Kovac passed away in his condo from heart failure at just 44 years old. The news shook the bodybuilding world, even though many knew the constant strain on his body might eventually catch up to him. Once again, the harsh reality of extreme bodybuilding showed its unforgiving side. Kovac's death fueled tough conversations about the future of the sport. Was it really sustainable to chase ever bigger physiques without considering the cost to health? His case made it painfully clear that behind the spectacle of giant muscles was a human being, subject to the same frailties as anyone else. A heart, after all, wasn't built to sustain that kind of load forever. Today, Greg Kovac is remembered as a legend of sheer size, a man who pushed muscular mass to unprecedented levels. His life and death remain a powerful symbol of bodybuilding's duality, the awe of a body transformed into something superhuman, and the sobering reminder of the price that might come with it. Mohammed Benaziza was one of the most respected bodybuilders of the 1990s, known worldwide by the nickname the Giant Killer. Born in Algeria, he won fans across the globe with his insanely shredded and detailed physique, showing a level of muscle definition that bordered on frightening. His ability to step on stage with a body so razor-sharp made him a prime example of what discipline and extreme preparation could achieve in bodybuilding. He especially shined in prestigious competitions. In 1990, he took home the Night of Champions title, a win that put him on the international map. Just 2 years later, in 1992, he claimed victory at the Grand Prix Holland, further cementing his status as one of the sport's top names at the time. These wins showcased not only his talent, but also his fearlessness in competing in an ever-demanding sport. But the cost of that extreme physique was steep. Muhammad was well known for his heavy use of diuretics, drugs that flush water from the body to highlight muscle definition. When overused, though, they can dangerously dehydrate the body, overwork the kidneys and heart, and even trigger sudden collapse. And tragically, that very practice would seal his fate. In October 1992, shortly after winning another show in the Netherlands, Muhammad began feeling weak and struggled to breathe. Even after voicing his discomfort, he didn't receive immediate medical attention. Just hours later, his body gave out, and he passed away at only 33 years old. The bodybuilding world was stunned. He was coming off a big win, looked to be at his peak, and no one expected such a sudden end. Benaziza's death sparked outrage and reflection across the sport. Athletes, coaches, and fans began openly questioning the reckless use of diuretics and other substances that delivered jaw-dropping physiques at the expense of the competitors' lives. He became a symbol of that razor-thin line between the pursuit of physical perfection and the preservation of health. Even decades later, Muhammad's legacy lives on. His physique is still remembered as a benchmark for extreme conditioning, but also as a warning. His tragic passing forced bodybuilding to confront a problem often ignored or whispered about: the very real danger of chemical abuse in the name of glory. That's why his story still echoes today. Mohammed Benaziza left the world with two lasting lessons. First, that discipline and dedication can transform the human body into something extraordinary. And second, that no title, no trophy, and no victory is worth the loss of life itself. Matarazzo was one of the most charismatic and memorable bodybuilders of the 1990s. Born in Boston, Massachusetts, he became famous for his massive arms and calves, his trademark on stage. His physique blended raw power with symmetry, and his electrifying presence made him a fan favorite wherever he competed. For many, Mike embodied the true spirit of bodybuilding: dedication, humility, and genuine connection with the people who supported him. Interestingly, before stepping into bodybuilding, Matarazzo tried his hand at boxing, inspired by the legendary character Rocky Balboa. In 1985, he even won the Massachusetts State Light Heavyweight Championship. That early start in sports gave him the discipline and fighter's mentality that later carried over into bodybuilding. The transition to the stage felt natural, and Mike quickly realized his true calling was reshaping the human body. Throughout his career, Mike competed in 7 editions of Mr. Olympia between 1991 and 2000. While he never took home the title, he consistently placed well, with his best finish being 9th in 1998, an impressive feat considering he was up against legends like Dorian Yates and Ronnie Coleman. Behind the scenes, Mike was respected as a gritty competitor who never backed down, no matter how stacked the lineup was. Fans felt a special bond with Matarazzo. His warm personality, easy smile, and constant willingness to chat made him one of the most approachable pros in the circuit. People didn't just admire his physique, they loved the man behind it. That genuine connection is why he's still remembered with so much affection and respect today. But Mike's journey wasn't without hardship. In 2004, he was forced to retire after undergoing open-heart surgery due to serious cardiac issues. Even away from the stage, he stayed active in the fitness world, encouraging young athletes and sharing his knowledge. Still, his health struggles followed him closely. Just 3 years into retirement, Mike suffered a heart attack that worsened his condition. From that point on, his battle was no longer for trophies, but for his life. In 2014, while waiting for a heart transplant, he passed away at only 48 years old. The bodybuilding community mourned deeply the loss of a man who still had so much to give, even beyond competition. The legacy of Mike Matarazzo goes far beyond his placings on stage. He will always be remembered as an athlete who combined talent, determination, and humanity. His story is both inspiring and cautionary. On one hand, proof of what hard work can achieve. On the other, a reminder of the risks that come when the body is pushed past its limits. Nasser El Sonbaty was one of the most respected and most controversial bodybuilders of his generation. Born in 1965 to an Egyptian father and a Yugoslav mother, he carried a unique cultural mix that shaped his striking personality. Known for his intelligence, charisma, and strong opinions, Nasser wasn't just a competitor. He was also a bold voice within the sport, someone who drew both admiration and criticism wherever he went. His bodybuilding journey started in 1983, competing in smaller shows while finding his place. Little by little, Nasser began gaining attention for his impressive genetics and the balanced look of his physique, size, symmetry, and definition all rolled into one. By 1994, he made it to the Mr. Olympia stage for the first time, finishing in 7th place. That debut marked his arrival at the very top of the sport. The peak of his career came in 1997, when Nasser placed second at Mr. Olympia, finishing just behind the legendary Dorian Yates. Many believed he deserved the crown that night, and from then on, he carried the nickname, the uncrowned Mr. Olympia. That controversial result cemented his status as one of the best in the world and fueled debates that still split fans to this day. Should Nasser have been the rightful champion? Beyond that, he scored major wins, including the prestigious Arnold Classic title in 1999. With his confident demeanor and commanding physique, Nasser became an icon of the 90s and early 2000s. His presence on stage was always highly anticipated, since he represented a blend of strategic intelligence, rigorous preparation, and a personality unafraid to speak its mind. But life wasn't without hardship. Nasser battled a severe staph infection that left him in critical condition, requiring multiple surgeries and extended hospital stays. His body, already pushed to the limit by years of intense training and competition, was left weakened. Even with his determination, he was never quite the same physically after that ordeal. In 2013, his story came to a tragic end. Nasser passed away in Egypt while sleeping, the cause being kidney and heart failure. He was just 47 years old, an age where he could still have been giving back to the sport as a mentor and role model. His death left a void in bodybuilding, taking away not only a world-class athlete, but also a figure with plenty of insight about the realities behind the stage lights. Today, Nasser El Sonbaty is remembered as an unfinished legend, the uncrowned Mr. Olympia. His legacy is both inspiring and cautionary. He showed the world that greatness in bodybuilding doesn't come only from a physique, but also from the personality, intelligence, and voice behind it. Shawn Rhoden was one of the biggest names in modern bodybuilding, and his 2018 Mr. Olympia win left a permanent mark on the sport. That night, he shocked the world by defeating Phil Heath, who was chasing his 8th straight title. Rhoden showcased a physique that was balanced, aesthetic, and powerful all at once, bringing back memories of classic bodybuilding standards. His victory didn't just crown his career, it reignited hope among fans who longed to see symmetry valued again over sheer mass. What made the achievement even more special was his age. Shawn was 43 years and 5 months old when he won the Olympia, making him the oldest athlete ever to lift the sport's most coveted trophy. That milestone showed that, even after decades of personal struggles and setbacks, the top was still within reach. His perseverance inspired thousands, proving that age doesn't have to be a barrier to greatness. But Rhoden's path wasn't only about glory. In 2019, at the height of his career, he was banned from the Olympia after being accused of misconduct. He always denied the charges, but he never got the chance to defend his title. The controversy split the bodybuilding community wide open, leaving behind the lingering question: could Shawn have kept his crown, or even won it back, if he'd been allowed to compete again? That turn of events deeply affected both his life and his image. From world champion to persona non grata in official competitions, Shawn found himself sidelined from the sport he loved. Still, he kept training, motivating his followers, and holding on to the belief that he could stage a comeback. At that point, his story felt less like that of a competitor and more like that of a warrior battling forces far greater than the opponents on stage. Then, in November 2021, came the tragic news. Shawn Rhoden had passed away from a heart attack at just 46 years old. The bodybuilding world was stunned. He was still relatively young and actively training. His sudden death once again raised difficult questions about the physical toll of elite-level bodybuilding and how the lifestyle of the sport impacts long-term health. Shawn's legacy is complicated, and that's exactly what makes it so powerful. On one hand, he'll always be remembered as the man who toppled an almost unbeatable champion and won the Olympia at an age when most thought it impossible. On the other, as the athlete who lost his chance to defend his crown due to outside circumstances and whose life ended far too soon. That contrast gave his story a near-tragic dimension in bodybuilding history. For fans, Shawn left behind more than just muscles and trophies. He left lessons about resilience, injustice, and limits. His life proved that even when everything seems stacked against you, it's still possible to rise to the top. But it also reminded the world that glory is fleeting, and health will always matter more than any title. George Peterson was a rising star in bodybuilding, first making waves in the classic physique division. His balanced, aesthetic, and finely detailed physique quickly made him a favorite among both fans and judges. Over time, he chose to level up, moving into the 212 division, where he displayed even more muscle maturity without losing the harmony that defined his look. That transition showed not just his versatility as an athlete, but also his ambition to take on bigger challenges. Expectations around George were always sky-high. At every show, he brought consistency and laser focus, delivering physiques that blended strength and beauty in a rare combination. His dedication on stage reflected his lifestyle offstage too, disciplined, determined, and above all, passionate about what he did. That's why his presence at the biggest competitions in the world was always so highly anticipated. But in 2021, tragedy struck. Just days before stepping on stage at Mr. Olympia, the sport's ultimate event, George Peterson passed away. He was found in his hotel room, lying face down with blood around his nose, signs pointing to a possible aneurysm. The bodybuilding world was blindsided, especially since George seemed to be in peak condition, both physically and mentally, ready to give his all on the Olympia stage. News of his death shook the community to its core. Training partners, coaches, and fans alike shared their grief, stunned by how suddenly someone so full of life could be gone. His coach even stated that George was right on point, both mentally and physically, which only deepened the sense of loss. It felt as though destiny had cut short a story that still had so much left to tell. At just 37 years old, George had a promising career still ahead of him. His name was already respected and admired, but there was a real sense that his best years were still to come, that he could go on to win even bigger titles and secure his place among the sport's all-time greats. His passing left a painful void, as bodybuilding lost not just an athlete, but a rising legend with so much left to give. Beyond his achievements on stage, George Peterson was admired as a true ambassador of bodybuilding. His humility, charisma, and respect for fans made him a role model, not only as an athlete, but as a human being. He inspired countless competitors and carried himself in a way that projected the sport positively, proving it was possible to be fiercely competitive without losing kindness and authenticity. His death once again forced tough reflections on the limits of the human body and the risks tied to extreme contest prep. But above all, George will be remembered for who he truly was, an example of dedication, passion, and inspiration. Cphiso Lundelo Thabit was seen as one of bodybuilding's brightest young prospects, coming straight out of South Africa. Still just 23, he had already collected major titles and stood out for his impressive physique, especially for someone so young. His biggest highlight came when he won the IFBB World Championship in the under 75 kg, about 165 pounds, category, a victory that put him on the international radar as a talent to watch closely. Many believed he had a brilliant future ahead of him in the sport. What made Cphiso special wasn't just his physique, but also his contagious energy. He was known for his enthusiasm on stage, always trying to excite and entertain the crowd. His attitude inspired younger athletes who saw in him not only an example of dedication, but also someone approachable, an athlete who made the sport feel lighter and more fun. That mix of talent and charisma made him a standout competitor. But in 2017, tragedy struck and changed his story forever. During a competition in his home country, Cphiso attempted a backflip to hype up the crowd. From the stands, it seemed like a simple move, but it demanded precision and perfect timing. Sadly, the stunt went wrong. He landed awkwardly, suffering a devastating neck injury. The scene was heartbreaking. People rushed to his side, and first aid was attempted on the spot. But the severity of the fall was clear. He was rushed to the hospital, and there was still hope. But shortly after, the worst was confirmed. At just 23 years old, the life of one of South Africa's most promising bodybuilders had been cut tragically short. News of his death spread quickly and sent shockwaves through the sports community worldwide. Athletes, coaches, and fans expressed deep sadness and disbelief. What made it even harder to accept was that Cphiso hadn't fallen victim to the health risks often linked with bodybuilding, but instead to a freak accident, something that could have happened to anyone. His passing sparked conversations about safety during performances and the extent to which athletes should push themselves to entertain a crowd. Many reflected on the pressure to stand out at events and how seemingly harmless gestures can lead to irreversible consequences. In Cphiso's case, his attempt to bring joy to the audience ended in a heartbreaking loss. Today, Cphiso Lundelo Thabit is remembered with warmth and respect, not only for his victories, but for his vibrant personality. His story, though short, left a mark on bodybuilding and stands as a reminder of the fragility of life. Dallas McCarver was seen as one of the brightest rising stars in modern bodybuilding. From a very young age, he caught attention with his incredible physique and the speed at which he made progress. Between 2012 and 2015, he racked up 3 wins in just 5 IFBB shows, an impressive feat for someone still at the very beginning of his career. His rapid climb suggested that it was only a matter of time before he became a major contender at Mr. Olympia. In 2016, Dallas reached a huge milestone by placing 8th at Mr. Olympia, the most prestigious stage in bodybuilding. For many, that was just the start of a career destined for the top. His size, symmetry, and charisma won over not only the judges, but also a growing legion of fans who saw him as a future champion. He was young, talented, and seemed to have everything needed to shine. But warning signs began to appear. In March 2017, during the Arnold Classic Australia, Dallas collapsed on stage mid-pose. The scene shocked the audience, but afterward he explained that he had been battling a respiratory infection that turned into bronchitis. While it seemed like an isolated incident, it was also the first public glimpse that his body was under serious strain. Just a few months later, in August 2017, tragedy struck. Dallas was found dead in his home at only 26 years old, with food scattered around him. The bodybuilding world was left stunned. One of its greatest young prospects had been taken in the prime of his youth, making the loss even harder to accept. The autopsy revealed alarming details about his health: an enlarged heart, swollen kidneys, a liver 4 times its normal size, and even undiagnosed thyroid cancer. These findings painted a grim picture. While Dallas looked like the picture of strength on the outside, his body was collapsing from the inside under the extreme demands of the sport. His death reignited heated debates about the use of steroids and other substances in bodybuilding. Many questioned whether the price athletes were paying was far too high for temporary glory. It also shed light on the lack of strict medical monitoring in a sport where the pressure to deliver bigger, better results never stops. Today, Dallas McCarver is remembered with both sadness and admiration. He showed the world what true dedication looks like, but his story also stands as a sobering reminder of the risks that come with professional bodybuilding at the highest level. We've reached the end of this intense journey, looking back on the stories of athletes who made their mark on bodybuilding, but whose lives were cut tragically short. Each name we mentioned here shows us both the brilliance of dedication and the heavy cost this sport can demand. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about these deaths? Are they the natural consequence of extreme choices or the direct result of substance abuse? Your opinion matters, so drop it down in the comments. If this video gave you something to think about or taught you something new, go ahead and hit that like button. That simple gesture helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more stories like this. Impactful, thought-provoking, and full of lessons. And if you enjoy this kind of content, consider becoming a channel member. That way, you directly support our work and make it possible for us to keep producing high-quality videos. And hey, if you made it this far, it means you really enjoy this type of content. So let's have a little fun. Comment the word muscular down below. That's how we'll know who stuck with us until the very end. It's always awesome to see who's part of that select group watching every second. Of course, if you're not subscribed yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell right now. And before you go, I want to invite you to stick around. On the end screen, you'll see another awesome video from the channel, and I'm sure you're going to love it. Click there. It's content you don't want to miss. Thanks so much for being here with me until the end. You truly make all the difference for this channel's growth. Big hug, and see you in the next video.